And we are live.
Episode 14, The Art of Coaching, Characteristics of an Elite Athlete. Exciting episode. I actually did a program. I actually created a curriculum, and this was in 2019, and it was regarding characteristics of an elite athlete. And I remember at the time when I created the curriculum, I was going through athletes through the decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, kind of like we did maybe a couple months ago. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
I think it was like the evolution of speed or one of those episodes.
We went over the 80s,
and I was describing the characteristics of an elite athlete, Tom Brady, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams. And we were talking about, all these different things. And then I taught it, and it was part of the curriculum because there's this perception that these elite athletes have these intangible skills that they're just born with. And that's not to deny that an athlete, let's say, for example, like an athlete like LeBron James, 6'8", 270, and he's really fast. So that would be genetic. Or let's say, for example, someone's upbringing that can influence their psychology and their motivation. So that's not to deny that there's definitely some external factors that can give an athlete an edge. But I was talking more so about the nuanced things. For example, if you watch a video of really any athlete describing another athlete, I was listening to Tony Romo. I forget what game it was, but there was a game, it was one of Tom Brady's last seasons, and he was describing Tom Brady, and he goes, look at his composure, look at his ability to lead the team, look at his mechanics, look at his field of vision. And he was using all these different things to describe what made Tom Brady great. And none of it was, oh, wow, I bet you Tom Brady has a good bench press. I wonder, how many days a week he's lifting. They were describing these character traits that would almost come off as nuance.
Yeah.
And there's this perception that when something's nuance, this athlete, he's just a phenom, right? Oh, he's good because he's genetically gifted and he's a phenom. And essentially when you use the word phenom, what you're essentially saying is, I cannot explain or describe why he's great, so I'm going to use the word he's a phenom. Yeah. Right. So when there's no explanation to what we're seeing, we use words like phenom, gifted, genetics, luck. Yeah. And we start using these words to describe these athletes. And the reality is, if you look at the body of work across all sports, if you look at baseball, basketball, football, any sport you could think of, soccer, the typical build of an athlete, like the profile, their height, their weight, it's pretty average, right? So when you take someone like, name a sport and I'll give you an example. Basketball. So let's say you take someone, that's actually a great example. How many NBA players are 6'8", 270 and really fast?
Not a lot.
Just one, right? Yeah. LeBron, Greek freak maybe. Like
Zion Williamson probably.
Zion.
Yeah.
But if you look at the rest of the NBA players, they actually have normal builds. Yeah. So most of the point guards, the 2 guards, the 3 guards, they're all going to have similar characteristics, right? Yeah. You look at a football, let's say you take a wide receiver like Cooper Kupp. Yeah. He's not, and then you have someone like from the Seahawks. He's jacked. What's his name? Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. He's 6'2", 230 with abs, or a Megatron. Let's just say Megatron.
Wait, I don't think he's on the Seahawks anymore, though.
He's not on the Seahawks anymore?
No.
I know who I'm talking about. I see his face.
Metcalf? Are you talking about
Metcalf?
Yeah, but I don't think
he's not on the Seahawks anymore.
If I remember correctly, I don't think.
All right, we're gonna have to fact check this one, you guys. But okay, so Metcalf, to me, freak, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Cooper Kupp, average build. If Cooper Kupp were to walk through the gym, you wouldn't go, oh my God. But if Metcalf walked through the facility, you'd go, oh my God, he's a freak.
Well, who had the better season too, actually, recently?
Right.
Yeah. I think Cooper actually performed better.
He's
At least
been a little
in
banged up,
fantasy,
but he's had some good
in
years.
fantasy, he was
right?
performing better. I remember, yeah.
But generally speaking, like if you look at their builds, their bodies, you don't go like you can build a Cooper Cup.
Yeah.
A Metcalf, okay, I'll give it to him. You don't see,
Which I think is a good example, though, because if you look at it, right, we're talking about Cooper Cup's a guy we can build. DK Metcalf isn't, but if Cooper Cup's stats based on fantasy, right?
Yeah.
That's what I remember. He was doing better. Then it's like, okay, well, it's the whole talent or genetic freak ability isn't everything. You still have to put in the work, and there's certain things you have to learn.
Because if you look at, you know, once again, you can look at the body of work of Metcalf, and I've listened to his like training. It's intense. He does 2 a days, 3 a days. His nutrition, he eats perfect. So it's like, okay, so he has genetics, but that's a combination of somebody who has genetics with the intangibles, the work ethic, and all those different things, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday, we were doing a speed session, great workout, right? And one of the kids that was in our class, he's actually probably the fastest, or one, if not he's one of the fastest for sure, if not the fastest kid on the football team.
Yeah.
Of a Pop Warner team that I help coach, and very fast, but not very effective. Meaning you watch his straight line speed, it looks awesome. It looks great, but he, effectiveness of speed, not very effective. And I told his dad, I said, look, I said, he doesn't look at how he uses his eyes. He's not engaging his peripherals enough. And he's not creating this visual perimeter that allows him to change directions well and do all those different things. Right.
Yeah.
I said, so because of him not utilizing his eyes, he's going to probably overspeed a lot.
Yeah.
Right. He's going to overspeed, overread a play. And then that can lead to a lot of frustrations. The dad looks at me and goes, that was literally his season last year. He goes, he was so fast. He was the fastest kid. And he kept messing up on plays and didn't understand what was going on. And so we did some vision things yesterday. Right. And that was fun. And immediately you see a result. So he got faster. He looked less awkward, and he was able to move laterally pretty quick. And did we make him faster? No, we literally did not change his fiber and his nervous system. We didn't do any of that.
We just unlocked the potential.
Yeah, quote unquote, we unlocked the potential by training something that's nuanced.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm using vision is because that is something that I remember growing up. I played basketball, as you know, and vision is one of those things that, oh, he just has great vision.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that is used often in describing elite athletes as having phenomenal vision. But it's funny because I think you can fact check me on this, but I think it's Stanford. They had done, they do all their physicals and all that, and testing their vision was one of them. And they found that all the athletes that had great vision, they just had 20/20. And they found a few that had 15/20 that literally had great vision, but the rest of them, they actually just had normal vision.
Wow. They
just knew how to use it. So for me to say, man, Magic Johnson has great vision, LeBron James has great vision, Tom Brady has great vision. I understand what people are saying by that, but they actually just have normal vision and they know how to utilize it because they train it.
I feel like a great example of an athlete with what you're talking about would probably be Kobe Bryant, because Kobe Bryant, nowhere in my books looked like he was a crazy athlete vertically, not a crazy athlete with speed, but he was effective with how he used it. Michael Jordan, I would say, freak athlete in the sense of his vertical and stuff. Kobe Bryant didn't quite have that magic in the air.
Yeah.
But his footwork was phenomenal. His ability to read the court was phenomenal. I think that would be like, obviously, I think his genetic freak for him was his ability to recover and train the way he did, because not a lot of athletes can train 16-hour days the way he was and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go to bed at 12 p.m. That would probably be his freak area. But yeah, again, I feel like Kobe Bryant would.
Great example.
It would be a great example of that then.
What's he known for?
His mindset.
Mamba mentality. Yeah. Okay. So once again, there's another example of saying this is what made Kobe great, right? He had the Mamba mentality. Can mindset be trained? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for me to say, or not even me, even other NBA players to be like, okay, he was just different. They'll use words like, oh, he's just different. I'm like, no, Kobe Bryant created an inner circle and surrounded himself with people that fed into him, and he reached out and he was motivated, right? And in his motivation, he developed that Mamba mentality, right?
Yeah.
Obviously he was always competitive, so that, you know, he was always competitive, but the mindset can be developed. I know George St. Pierre, for probably one of the best UFC champions ever, and he had intense anxiety, and he was working with a sports psychologist named Brian Kane, who's phenomenal. I've talked about him before, and he's worked with Cy Young winners, a lot of good stuff. Go look him up. Brian Kane, awesome. But he was talking about how he would have, George St. Pierre would have intense anxiety, and he was a champion. He never lost, and never lost a championship fight. No, I'm sorry. He lost one. He'd make him do a walkthrough the day before the fight. He'd walk into the arena, do a walkthrough, did visualization, did journaling, did all these different things, right? And then he started to develop the mental muscles, right? So I learned about this because I've been an avid UFC fan for 20 plus years. And, you know, I remember at the time when I used to watch George St. Pierre fight, I'm like, man, he's just so composed. He's so calm. He's so this and that. And then after he retires, I find out that he had all these mental issues.
Yeah.
And he was working on it with an actual sports psychologist. So for me to, at the time, it'd be like, man, GSP, he's just different. He's just so relaxed, so composed, and so focused, and he always sticks to the game plan. And then after he retires, I find out, oh, wait a second. He was actually having all these issues. So my perception back then, I could have easily been like, GSP, he's just different. He's just genetically gifted.
Yeah.
And there was nothing genetic. I'm not to say that genetics don't play a role in our biology, right? How tall you are, how fast you are, that definitely plays a role. So I don't want to deny genetics, but learning about George St. Pierre having all these mental health issues, I was like, oh my God, he started working, and he worked with Brian Kane all the way through the end of his career.
Well, I feel like people also forget, and this kind of deviates, but it's still a part of it, right? When you get to that professional level, it's not just the sport anxiety you have, it's the media now that's on you. It's all these other things that happen within life, which is why it's like, if your athlete's looking to play even at a college level nowadays, right? Even at high school, if your kid's really good, he gets noticed pretty soon. That puts an attraction on them. Have you noticed because I feel like nowadays we're talking about mental health a lot more.
Yeah.
Have you actually noticed a difference within athletes nowadays to be better within the mental aspect? We've kind of touched on this in a previous episode.
That's a tough one. I would say yes and no. Yes, because there's resources. So we've talked about in prior episodes how society, social media, different things like that. There's different stressors today that exist that didn't exist back then. So therefore, mental health and anxiety and things like that are higher than they've ever been. Yeah. But on the flip side, there's also solutions. So like sports psychologists used to be a kind of a nuanced thing, right? So if you look back, you know, in the 80s, 90s, you know, were athletes working with sports psychologists back then? Probably not, right?
Yeah.
But they also didn't have, you know, the things that are creating and leading to the anxieties, right? The pressures, the media, social media, that was different, right? So I feel where today we have a lot more, I don't know the math on it, but I would assume it's a lot higher today than it was back then. But we also have better solutions today to those problems.
So you would say kids nowadays are more aware of the mental side of the game? Or is it something that still needs to be taught?
It needs to be taught.
Yeah.
It definitely needs to be taught.
Or I guess that was the incorrect way of saying it. Like 15 years ago with me versus nowadays, are athletes coming to you with a better mental aspect of like awareness of how big the mental part of the game is?
Let's talk about that. Yeah. Let's talk about that. So we're talking about characteristics of an elite athlete, right? And, you know, there was, I did I remember I do this probably about once a year. And this is something I heard this story, maybe about 5-6 years ago. And I loved it. I'll tell the story right now. And I tell it about once a year. And the story went like this, because there was a room. This is a true story. There was a room of college athletes. I forget what the university was. And they said it was like over 100 plus athletes. And they said, I want everybody to raise your hand and keep your hand up. I'm going to ask questions. If the answer is no to the question, you put your hand down. He goes, keep your hand up if you love playing sports and sports are fun. And
yeah,
everybody kept their hand up, obviously. He goes, okay. Keep your hand up if you are strength training consistently for the past 6 months to a year. You've been consistently strength training, for 3, 4, 5 times a week. Lost some hands. It was still about 80% of the room. He goes, keep your hands up if you are continuously training and working on your craft skill wise, whatever the sport is, you're working on your skill, you're working on your craft, minimum 3 to 4 times a week. Lost some hands. It was still around like 60%. The number is going to be off a little bit, but you'll get the point. Next question was, raise your hand if you're consistently doing conditioning. And he started going through all these variables and we started losing hands. When he started getting to the mental side and speed, agility, he said, keep your hand up if you're continuously working on your mental game, whether it be journaling, seeing a sports psychologist, meditation, vision boards, where you continuously, you actively train mental daily, and you're investing 5 to 10 minutes, there was one hand left up. That same athlete that had his hand left up ended up getting drafted. So he said the reality is, to be elite, you don't even have to be great. You just have to participate.
It's almost like Bryce last night with the manifestation.
Yeah. So if you're training, let's say, for example, you're training, I'm doing my strength training 4 to 5 days a week. I'm doing speed and power development, 2-3 times a week. Yeah. I'm doing skill work daily. I'm working on my mental daily. I'm working on my nutrition. If you, just by participating in all those boxes that needed to be checked, you already have a superior advantage. You already have a superior advantage over your competition. So I learned about this in probably about 2018, 2019. When I first learned about this, I changed my whole structure on training, and I started making it more about mental training. And I started going over those boxes and telling the story to the kids. And I said, okay, how often are you doing your mobility? How often are you sleeping? How often are you journaling? How often? And I made it about, you don't have to be great at all of them, but you just have to do all of them. Yeah. Since 2018, 19, since I started doing that, I've had, of all the kids I train, I would say it's a really high number. I'm going to say 90% of them get scholarships. That's an astronomical number. Yeah. Over 90% of the kids I train end up getting scholarships. And it's not because they're genetically gifted. It's because we're taking these intangibles like mental, vision, sleep, and we're making them the most complete athlete. So by being a complete athlete, you have a superior advantage over even somebody else that is genetically gifted.
Makes sense. I mean, your body reacts to your mental state. If you're in a bad spot mentally, with depression or anxiety or whatever it is, your body reacts to that, and recovery can actually be affected based on your mental state too, a little bit, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I want to do in no particular order. I'm going to name off all the things that make an